The doors to combat deck 8 slid open with a hollow metallic sigh, spilling light across the polished training floor. Recruits of a dozen species were already scattered across the deck, stretching, sparring, arguing, showing off. The space always thrummed with nervous energy, but today it carried an undercurrent of something sharper. Humans had that effect on the room. Mara Keene stepped inside with the kind of quiet presence that made people look twice. 19 years old, short auburn hair tied back, training uniform crisp and plain, no swagger, no noise. Yet the deck seemed to cool a little as she walked toward the mats. A trio of Lerny whisperers folded their frilled ears back. A pair of Korthaxians paused mid-drill. Even the heavy-boned Grawl recruits gave her a sidelong glance. Humans were labeled Deathworlders for a reason, and everyone here had watched at least one video of a human soldier doing something that defied sense. Mara ignored the stares. She always did. She set down her water pack, knelt, and began tightening the straps on her boots. Her movements were precise, almost meditative. It was a ritual her mother taught her on Mars. Slow hands calm a fast mind. Across the deck, someone scoffed loudly. Mara didn't look up. She started her warm-up, rolling her shoulders, rotating her wrists, then shifting into clean, economical strikes. A simple pattern, jab, cross, elbow, pivot, sweep, but efficient enough to draw notice. The crack of her heel against the padded column made a few recruits flinch. Not because it was loud. Because the column vibrated. She dialed the power back. On the far side of the deck, a Korthaxian with slate-green scales and 4 thick arms watched her with growing irritation. Vrax Thol'Ruun. 7 feet tall, twice her mass, and loud enough that everyone knew when he entered a room. He'd been talking about humans since the semester began. And none of it was flattering. "Look at her," he muttered to his companions. "Fragile bones. Soft skin. They exaggerate their reputation. I've crushed thicker creatures under my heel." His friends grunted encouragement. Vrax puffed his chest, already imagining the audience he'd gather by the end of the day. Mara kept her back to him. She moved from strikes into controlled balance work, pivoting on a single foot, letting her center settle. The deck felt comfortable beneath her, firm enough to hold her weight, flexible enough to absorb it. Footsteps approached. Heavy ones? Vrax stopped a meter behind her. His shadow fell long across her training square. "You're in my space, human," he announced. Mara finished a smooth turn, lowering her foot. She didn't bother looking at him. "I'm assigned here for the hour," she said. Her tone was neutral, even polite. Vrax didn't know what to do with polite. "Then move. I was here first." A few recruits drifted closer, sensing a spectacle. Vrax flexed all 4 arms, claws clicking. "You're like all your kind. Hiding behind rules. Weak." Mara finally looked at him, just long enough to acknowledge his presence. "I'm not here to fight you," she said. "Use the other side of the deck." Her calm made him bristle. He stepped closer, invading her space. His breath carried the faint metallic scent of Korthaxian metabolism. "Turn around when I speak to you." Mara turned away and resumed her stance. For Vrax, that was worse than an insult. The instructor on duty, Lieutenant Hale, called for the recruits to gather for a demonstration. Mara moved to tie her bootlace that had loosened during warm-ups, sitting on a bench near the sparring circle. She worked quickly, making sure both straps were even. Vrax ignored the instructor completely and stalked toward her. "Stand up," he ordered. Mara didn't. She pulled the last strap tight. "Mara," Hale warned from across the deck. "Ignore him." "She already is," Vrax snarled. "That's the problem." He reached her bench. His shadow swallowed her completely. Dozens of eyes locked onto the scene, breath held, tension rising like heat. Mara gave the lace one more tug. "Walk away," she murmured. Vrax didn't walk away. He grabbed a fistful of her hair. Gasps rippled through the deck, some horrified, others thrilled, a few simply stunned that anyone would touch a human that way. Mara's head barely moved, but the pull was sharp enough to crease the skin at her temple. For 1 second, the room went absolutely still. A learnee dropped a training rod. A Grawl recruit muttered a curse. Even Hale froze, torn between intervening and watching the consequences unfold. Mara inhaled slowly. Her hands were still on her boot. Vrax wrenched again, trying to drag her upright. "Look at me when." "Let go," she said. Her voice was soft, almost gentle, but something in the sound made 2 nearby recruits step back. Vrax smirked. "Or what, human?" "You'll." Mara's right hand shot up, faster than the eye could track. 2 fingers, only 2, closed lightly around his wrist. The shift in the room was immediate. Air tightened. Bodies tensed. Some species instinctively crouched, sensing a predator about to move. Mara didn't stand. She didn't even turn her head. She simply applied pressure. A faint, crisp pop echoed. Vrax's eyes flashed wide. His breath caught. 3 of his arms twitched involuntarily. He tried to pull back. He couldn't. Mara's posture didn't change. Her expression didn't change. Only her grip shifted, a tiny rotation of her wrist, and Vrax gasped, his knees buckling under the sudden pain blooming up his forearm. "I said let go," she repeated. Her tone was unchanged. Controlled. Calm. Most recruits had never seen a human fight. They'd heard stories. Humans lifting equipment 2 species couldn't budge, surviving injuries that would kill others, fighting predators barehanded, but seeing it was different. Vrax's grip loosened. But his pride didn't. He tried to force a counter-strike with his upper right arm, swinging downward in a wild arc. Mara moved her fingers a millimeter. A louder crack sounded. Vrax dropped to 1 knee. Hale finally snapped out of his paralysis. "Keene! Release him!" Mara released instantly, raising both hands in compliance. Vrax, foolish and furious, lunged. Mara didn't rise. She didn't brace. She simply leaned a few inches to the side and flicked 2 knuckles into a point just below his sternum. Vrax's massive form jerked as if struck by a shock baton. His limbs spasmed once, twice. Then he collapsed face first onto the deck. Unconscious. Silence washed across the room. Mara lowered her hand, exhaling softly. A few strands of her hair slipped loose and fell across her cheek. Hale stared at Vrax's motionless body, then at her. "What did you?" he began. "You told me to release him," Mara said simply. A medic rushed forward. Another recruit whispered. "He didn't even stand up." Mara reached for her water pack, calm as ever. Somewhere behind her, a cadet murmured 7 words that would echo through the academy by the end of the day. "She put him in the ICU, sitting down." Vrax hit the deck hard, the thud echoing through the training hall like a dropped crate. The silence that followed felt unnatural, too sharp, too complete for a room usually filled with shouts, impact pads, and clashing drills. Mara didn't move at first. She watched for a rise in Vrax's chest to confirm he was still breathing. When she saw the faint expansion of his ribcage, she relaxed her shoulders. Nothing about her expression resembled triumph, just quiet calculation, the same look she had while tying her boots. Lieutenant Hale finally spoke. "Everyone step back," he ordered, voice stiff. "Clear the area." Recruits obeyed instantly. A few back so far they pressed against the walls. No one wanted to be mistaken for a second challenger. The medics entered moments later, 2 compact Sari twins and a towering Grawl nurse whose heavy boots clanked with each step. They moved straight to Vrax, checking his pulse, eyes, and joints with brisk efficiency. 3 dislocations, one of the Sari murmured. "Upper arm, lower elbow, secondary wrist. Nerve trauma near the sternum. Shock index is high." "Will he make it?" Hale asked. The medic nodded. "He'll live. But he's going to the ICU." Mara sat quietly on the bench as they lifted Vrax onto the stretcher. His limbs dangled awkwardly from the damage, and the sight drew uneasy glances from the assembled recruits. Some watched Mara instead, trying to understand how someone her size delivered that kind of result. One of the Grawl muttered under his breath. She barely moved. Hale turned toward Mara. Keene, he said, motioning her toward the far corner. With me. She followed without protest. When they were out of earshot of the others, Hale crossed his arms. His face was unreadable, but his jaw tightened. You need to explain exactly what you did. He grabbed my hair, she said. I controlled the limb so he couldn't tear it out. You broke him in 3 places. No, she corrected softly. He broke himself by pulling while his wrist was restrained. I used minimal force. Hale stared at her. Define minimal. 12%. He ran a hand down his face. 12%, he repeated, as if the number offended the laws of physics. I complied when you ordered me to stop, she added. You complied? And then he lunged. She nodded. I responded with what was necessary to avoid a full strike. Hale paced once, scanning the deck, then returned his attention to her. You understand what happens next? Yes. The Council will review the footage. The Korthaxian envoy will demand a hearing. You'll be questioned. Possibly suspended. Mara accepted this without flinching. Understood. Hale sighed. You're not in trouble yet. But this won't be simple. A buzz rippled across the deck. A group of recruits huddled together, whispering about the incident. The Korthaxians in particular looked shaken. Not angry, just unsettled. Vrax was one of their strongest. Seeing him fall without his opponent standing had shattered a layer of confidence they'd always carried. A small voice cut through the noise. Is she being arrested? It came from a Ferenii youth, small, feathered, wide-eyed. Hale barked. No. She's not. The Ferenii blinked rapidly, relieved. Mara stayed silent. The medics wheeled Vrax's stretcher toward the exit, passing close enough for Mara to see his face, slack, pale green, his pride carved away by unconsciousness. One of his hands twitched involuntarily. The Grawl nurse glanced at her. You held back, he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Yes. Good, he grunted. Then he continued out of the deck. As soon as the doors sealed behind the stretcher, a calm panel on the wall chimed. Hale checked his wrist display, frowned, then turned to Mara. The Chancellor wants you in the administrative wing. Now. A few recruits sucked in a breath. The Chancellor didn't summon cadets casually. Mara lifted her water pack, slung it over her shoulder, and walked beside Hale toward the exit. Her steps remained steady, calm, as though she were heading to a routine evaluation rather than a disciplinary review. Halfway down the corridor, Hale broke the silence. You could have ended him. I didn't. I know. That's what worries me. Mara didn't respond. She didn't need to. She understood perfectly. A cadet who could shatter a Korthaxian's arms from a seated position raised questions the Academy wasn't eager to answer. When they reached a lift, Hale keyed an override. The doors opened with a soft chime. You'll speak plainly, he instructed. No excessive detail. No speculation. Just facts. Facts, she repeated. And Mara. Hale hesitated. Don't demonstrate anything. Even if they ask? She nodded once. The lift descended through the Academy's central spine, windows flashing glimpses of Tau Cygni IV's pale horizon. The planet rotated slowly, blue-white clouds drifting over a surface dotted with neutral outposts and training fields. When the lift stopped, they stepped into a quieter corridor, carpeted, lined with banners from each coalition species. At the end stood the Chancellor's office and, beyond that, the Council chamber. Hale halted outside a tall door. This is where I leave you, he said. You'll be escorted the rest of the way. Thank you, sir. He gave her a long look. Something in it wasn't frustration, it was caution edged with respect. Good luck. Mara watched him disappear before a pair of administrative officers approached her. Cadet Mara Keene, one said. Please follow us. She fell into step with them, passing portraits of decorated officers, humans, Korthaxians, Lerny, and others. The walls were quiet, the air still, the lighting low. It felt less like a school and more like a tribunal hall. The officers stopped before a set of double doors engraved with the Coalition emblem. "Wait here," the taller one instructed. "You'll be called in shortly." She stood alone as they vanished inside. Voices murmured beyond the doors, sharp, clipped, official. She caught fragments. "Dangerous if unchecked. Footage leaves little ambiguity. Korthaxian delegation furious. Protocol violations." Mara exhaled slowly. She felt no guilt for defending herself, no satisfaction at Vrax's collapse. She felt only the quiet awareness that whatever happened next would shape her future at the Academy. The doors finally opened. A dignitary stepped out, tall, silver-skinned, a luminary elder with eyes like molten glass. "Cadet Keene," he said. "The Council will see you now." As she entered the chamber, the last line of Hale's warning echoed in her mind. "This won't be simple." And she knew he was right. The council chamber resembled an ancient amphitheater crossed with a command center. Tiered platforms rose in sweeping arcs around a central floor lit by a narrow beam of white light. Representatives of 12 species sat behind curved consoles, their faces sharp, unreadable, evaluating. Mara stepped into the illuminated center. The doors shut behind her with a low finality. Chancellor Arden Veleth, a stoic, silver-haired human with a reputation for balanced judgment, observed her from the highest platform. His eyes were steady, neither sympathetic nor hostile. "Cadet Mara Keene," he began. "You've been summoned to answer for the incident on Combat Deck 8. Your actions are under review by the Coalition Council." A murmur followed from several consoles. The Korthaxian envoy, a towering figure clad in ceremonial armor, leaned forward, scales glinting like knives. "Let us address the truth without embellishment," he growled. "A Korthaxian recruit lies in critical condition because a human launched an unprovoked assault." Mara lifted her chin. "I didn't provoke the conflict," she said. "And I didn't launch an assault," the envoy hissed. "You shattered 3 joints and disabled one of our young warriors." Arden raised a hand, halting the rising noise. "Cadet, the council will review the footage. Then we will hear your explanation." A holographic projection activated overhead. The training deck came to life, Mara seated on the bench, tying her boot, Vrax looming above her. Every detail magnified, the hair grab, the forced pull, her controlled grip, the dislocation, the brief struggle, the final nerve strike. No commentary. No sound. Just the raw sequence. When it ended, silence pooled in the room. The luminary elder spoke first. "She never stood," a Targon delegate added. "Her posture remained passive until physical aggression escalated." The Korthaxian envoy clenched his jaw. "She could have stepped back. She could have warned him." "I did," Mara replied. "Twice." The elder nodded. "Her statements are consistent with the footage." The Korthaxian envoy shot her a cold stare. "You nearly killed my kin." Mara didn't react to the hostility. "If I had used lethal force," she said quietly, "your recruit wouldn't be in the ICU. He would be in a morgue." A ripple of discomfort swept the chamber. Arden leaned forward. "Clarify your meaning." "Humans are constantly regulating strength," Mara explained. "Especially in mixed-species environments. I applied the minimum necessary force to break his hold and stop his attack." "What percentage?" a Lerny counselor asked. 12. That single number changed the atmosphere. Several species shifted, suddenly aware of the implication. 12% meant the incident could have been far worse. The Korthaxian envoy, however, seized the moment. "You admit you hold destructive power beyond reasonable limits. This alone makes you a threat to Academy stability." Mara met his eyes. "I'm not the threat. Reckless pride is." A faint murmur rose among the delegates, some in agreement, some in disapproval. Arden raised his voice slightly. "We will hear from the medical chief." A broad-shouldered Grawl physician stepped forward, datapad in hand. The injuries sustained by recruit Vrax are consistent with a controlled takedown. Damage was localized, not excessive. All dislocations were clean. The sternum strike triggered a nerve shutdown, not cardiac distress. She pulled her force immediately when ordered. And if she hadn't? The envoy demanded. The Grawl met his glare without flinching. If she had used even half her strength, the recruit's spine would have collapsed. She demonstrated restraint. That statement landed like a heavy stone. Arden folded his hands. Cadet Keene, what were your intentions during the altercation? Ending the conflict with minimum harm. I didn't want to fight him. Then why cripple him? The envoy snapped. I didn't cripple him. He'll recover fully. She paused. He ensured his own injuries by continuing after being told to let go. A soft, incredulous laugh came from a Zerthi delegate. He attacked a seated human. He's fortunate she chose not to stand. The envoy's scales bristled. You defend her? I state facts, the Zerthi replied. Nothing more. Arden tapped his console. We've heard enough. The council will deliberate. The lights dimmed slightly as the delegates switched to private channels, voices blending into a muted hum. Mara remained still, hands clasped behind her back, gaze fixed ahead. She didn't shift her weight or fidget, she simply waited. Minutes passed. Finally, the hum ceased. Arden stood. The council has reached a verdict. The envoy leaned forward sharply, anticipating a victory. Cadet Mara Keene, Arden said, voice firm. The council finds no grounds for disciplinary action. Shock rippled across the room. The Korthaxian envoy surged to his feet. This is an insult. Arden continued over him. The footage confirms you initiated physical aggression. The cadet acted defensively and with restraint. Furthermore, she complied immediately with instructor orders. She disabled him, the envoy roared. Because he continued his attack after being ordered to stop. Arden countered. Responsibility lies with Vrax. A few delegates murmured assent. The envoy's eyes burned with humiliation. This will not be forgotten. My people will respond. Arden's voice hardened. Your recruit violated academy rules and assaulted a fellow cadet without provocation. The council advice is simple. Teach your warriors control. The envoy slammed his console shut and stormed from the chamber, the door rattling behind him. When the room settled, Arden looked back to Mara. You are dismissed, cadet. Return to your quarters. Training resumes tomorrow. Mara nodded once. Yes, Chancellor. She exited the chamber, escorted only by the quiet echo of her footsteps. The walk back to Combat Deck 8 was familiar but felt different now. The corridors still buzzed with faint footsteps and soft conversation, but recruits glanced at her with a new mixture of respect, awe, and caution. When she entered the deck, the room quieted again. Not in fear, rather in acknowledgement. Several species stepped aside to give her space. A few nodded politely. The Farenia youth from earlier gave a timid wave. Mara offered a small nod back. Lieutenant Hale approached, arms crossed. Council let you walk? Yes. He exhaled. Good. Means I can stop writing the worst-case report of my career. Mara sat on the same bench from earlier. Her hair had come loose. She gathered it quickly and retied it. Hale shook his head. Try to avoid sending anyone else to medical this week. I'll try, she said. Next time someone grabs you. They won't, she replied. He studied her face, searching for arrogance. He found none, only certainty. Fair enough, he muttered. She rose and moved to an empty square on the deck. Recruits watched as she began her routine, measured, quiet, precise, just as before. But this time, no one stepped into her space. No one heckled. No one tested a human's patience. They had learned. You don't provoke a Deathworlder. Especially one who remains calm while the room panics. And somewhere in the Academy's ICU wing, Vrax Thol'Ruun lay unconscious, living proof of that lesson.